Hello, everybody, and welcome to Boss Talks. I'm Evan Happel, your host. I'm with Community Boss, and we have a great show for you today. Number 103 with Annemarie Hobson from the Northeast up in the Delaware market. She is somebody that's been in the industry just over 30 years, and she's a person that's most recently been a regional manager, but she's really held a lot of positions within multifamily and is what I'm finding somebody that is known and loved by lots of the people that have worked with her or worked alongside her. And so I hope that they show up for her today and bring the kudos and all that kind of stuff, because that's always fun. But it's going to be a great conversation, and we're going to hit on things that sometimes are hard to talk about, like finding work and maybe not as hard, but sometimes caring for your customers, but then also leadership, which she has plenty of that under her belt. So super excited to talk to her further about those things. But before we get there, again, I'm Evan Happel with Community Boss. We have a great solution for you when it comes to managing your physical spaces. So if it's your parking, your amenities, or mapping, we can cover you with our PropTech solution or software. And we can also generate some revenue and just make it a better place for your residents to live and use their wonderful community. So if you have any questions, by all means, reach out to me. But today it's about Annemarie. So let's bring her to the show. Annemarie, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, and I'm so happy that your boss bling arrived in time for showtime. Love it. Love that you're wearing it. You are a boss. You earned the title of boss. I like to call it a name tag sometimes. So like when I'm out at the different trade shows, I like to say, "Hey, come get your name tag," and they're always like, "What do you mean?" And I hand them out my boss bling. So they usually love it. But again, thanks for being here.
Well, I really appreciate the opportunity. I'm excited about today as well as nervous. So, I don't know.
Nothing to be nervous about. You know what you're talking about. You've been in this industry a while. You are an expert at what you do, and I know that that'll shine through in our conversation. So again, thanks for being here and being brave and jumping out, because this isn't something everybody does. Although I love to give opportunity to more and more of the industry. So thanks for stepping out and doing it.
Great.
Yeah, awesome. All right, I have a few questions I'd like to kick it off with to kind of warm things up, get you, I guess, comfortable in the show. And then from then on, you're like, am I even on camera? So to kick it off, what I'd love to start with is when it comes to your music of choice for getting you motivated and getting going, what is your go-to jam?
Oh, motivated and getting me go. So there's a lot. So I'm more of a, like, you can put me in some 60s music.
All right.
And Motown, that'll get me going. And it depends on what I'm doing too. So, if I need to clean my kitchen, it's Andrea Bocelli.
Okay.
If I want to have a few drinks, it might be, where's Alexa? Where's my 80s hip hop at?
Okay.
So it really depends. I love all types of music. My children are both very involved musically. I don't like their music, I'll tell you that. So one plays the drums and the other plays the electric guitar. And they are, I think it's hardcore, but it's heavy hardcore.
Like death metal? Like,
yeah. So I can do Metallica. This is beyond Metallica.
Okay. Is this like Screamo? They're really going after it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I went to one of their shows last week, and I've only been to 2 shows, one for each boy. And I did my job. I stayed away from the people who were flailing and kicking, because that's how they mosh these days. It's a different kind of mosh, though. It's not the same mosh that when I grew up.
Yeah, kind of violent.
It's a little violent. Yeah, within 10 seconds of their song starting, the kid next to me got kicked in the eye, and I was like, okay, it's time for me to back up some. And that's what I did. Yeah, but I support them wholeheartedly.
Did they give you recommendations on what to wear to it so you fit in?
No, they're really appreciative that we show up when we show up. So
Okay.
it's not so
They
much
don't
about
push it
what
too
we
much.
wear, and you have to pay to get in. So every bit that you pay goes towards the bands that are participating and playing there. So they don't really care what you wear as long as you show up.
Okay. Awesome. That's funny. I actually know somebody who's in multifamily that has a past of being a lead singer of a band that did pretty well, and then now he's working for a supplier to the industry. So
Wow.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So they'd have something in common.
It could be.
That's awesome. All right. And then next up, you've been in the industry a while. You've been around the block. You've seen a lot. You've heard a lot. One question, especially for people that are on the operations side of things, I like to ask, and it's a new question again,
Oh.
is when it comes to parking, do you have any humorous stories to share when it comes to that, especially around multifamily?
So, most of the stories I have regarding parking are not humorous.
Or maybe
There's some
any
angry
kind of story.
resident ones,
Yeah,
but I
yeah.
can tell you, as it relates to your service, I think, as a leader, some of the challenging conversations that I've had with site team members revolve around we can't do parking because we don't have enough spots, which
Uh-huh.
is absolutely like the opposite of why you should do parking, and trying to work through some of the challenges with getting the buy-in from the site team to promote a really good and active program to keep residents and their guests parked where they're not going to get towed,
Right.
keeping their cars legal. So I was looking at, some of the different offerings that you guys have, and I think you have great products out there that would be very useful to many of the people in our industry right now.
Well, I appreciate that. And it's actually funny you say that because there's been people I've talked to, and when you're on my side of things, you talk to somebody and they're like, "Oh yeah, we don't need that." And then somebody I was recently talking to, she's like, "They're lying. They totally need that." She's like, there isn't an apartment community that has good parking."
Especially not those that were built before 1980, right?
Yes, yes. And actually that's especially like garden style, you have multiple entrances. It's hard kind of to know who belongs, who doesn't belong. It's very open. You got random people just using your parking. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That is in hindsight, like where we've had a lot of success in people using our product is those kind of communities. So definitely. All right. Well, thank you for sharing that. And then the final one hasn't changed. I'm sticking with it. When it comes to your caffeinated beverage of choice, what is your go-to with that?
So definitely my coffee in the morning is a
Okay.
go-to. So thank you for the coffee. I have
Yeah.
not broke it open yet because down at my beach house, which I'll be heading to tonight or tomorrow morning, I have a true like percolator coffee pot that I'm gonna use with that coffee. So
Beautiful. Yeah,
yeah,
it's already ground for you. It's ready to rock. I think it's a little finer grind than maybe your typical like drip. So, but I've heard from a lot of people, and I've drank it myself, that it's a pretty good cup of coffee.
yeah. So coffee in the morning until probably 10 or 11. Um, Maybe a pick me up cup at like 3 o'clock if I need one. And I've steered away from all other caffeine pretty much. Every once in a while, I'll have a Coke or a Pepsi, but just all the sugar is dragging me down there. So I tried to get away from that.
Yeah, I hear you. Whenever I drink too much sugar, it actually just makes me tired.
Yeah.
It's more of a crash, I think, than
Yeah.
anything. Yeah, I've definitely, I think early on didn't know it, but that was always a thing for me and
Hmm.
needed to pay better attention. And newsflash, people, it doesn't get better as you get older. So
No, it gets worse. It
yeah,
definitely gets worse. And, you need vitamins to give you the energy versus, what you used to go through for sodas and everything else and food sources. So it's just
right.
a different world.
Yeah, It's definitely is. Well, thanks for answering those questions. You nailed it. We're through it. Now we're getting to it. So I want to just kick it off by talking a little bit about your history in the industry, maybe how you got into it, and all the way up to where you're at now. So what's your origin story in multifamily?
So I am one of those people who fell into it by accident, and just never got out, fell in love. I fell into it and fell in love with it. So out of high school, I had a best friend who had landed a job as a part-time leasing consultant, and she got a free apartment. So in my eyes, I was like, hey, I'm 18. I can get a job in leasing and get a free apartment. This would be great. I'll do that until I figure out what it is I want to do with my life. And I ended up getting a job in leasing. I never lived on site, not once in my career. I've rented places, but never on site where I've worked.
Yeah.
And, I just kind of fell in and fell in love. So within, 6 months of my first career as a leasing consultant, I had great leadership at that time. Property manager was like, you could really do this. You could be a property manager. And I was like, oh, well, maybe I'll try and do that. They seem to have pretty decent lives, and they seem to be doing well, the regional and the property manager. So I continued my career. I was property manager for years. And then, and I shouldn't say my career, I continued with different jobs within the industry. And then I started to work for Home Properties. It was in 2003 as a property manager. And I say that's where I started my career, because they became the only company to give me the opportunity to expand from property manager to regional manager. So I was with them for several years and had to leave for some personal reasons, before joining on board with Morgan and Bell, and then most recently Love. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. Started out young and just haven't really dropped out of it at all. I have no desire to.
Yeah. And what's been your favorite position so far?
Oh, I'm a leasing consultant at heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at this point, being a regional, do you love coaching people that are in that role?
Love coaching them. And I actually like it when people are out sick and I get to sit in the seat sometimes and be able to rent apartments. And anybody on the teams that I've worked for will tell you that as soon as I get a lease, I'm telling everybody that works for me, I can do it. I still got it,
I still got it. That's awesome.
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I love it that you haven't gotten to a point where you're like, oh, I'm too good for that.
Oh, no.
That's for other people.
Nobody in the leadership roles, I think, in this industry is too good for any job that's out there, right? It truly takes a team, and you truly have to know what everybody is going through and be able to walk the walk and talk the talk to be able to be successful.
Yeah, absolutely. So for that role of leasing, what is it that you think is one of the bigger challenges for people when it comes to doing it?
I think what I see most is not being genuine. So one thing you may or may not get about me is I'm a wallflower. I am not somebody who is very vocal or, the life of the party. I mean, I can be at times, but that's not me. I'm more the wallflower, sit back and listen. So if you have good listening skills and you're really able to relate and try and want to meet people's needs, then you're going to be successful. There are people who aren't genuinely that way. So they have to try really hard. And sometimes you can see that it's somebody trying to be thoughtful when they're not really being thoughtful. So coachable.
Almost like they're overdoing it when they could just be themselves.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's best when we can be comfortable in our own skin with a few, like, not everybody's super great at like asking appropriate questions and things, which I think is just a learned skill. So as long as you feel comfortable in your skin and you don't pretend to be somebody else, I think that's probably a key, like what you're saying, for sure.
Yeah. I think to your latter point, the hardest thing that people have that hard time asking the question with, that was very garbled, is what's stopping you from applying today? Or let's go back and like assuming that they're going to buy what you're selling them. And usually that comes from not having confidence either in themselves or in the product that they're trying to sell.
Yeah.
or in how they sold the product. So
Right.
uh, that's probably the biggest challenge, I think, as a leader of a leasing team, making sure that the teams have confidence in what it is that they're selling, so that when they do ask for that application, that they're comfortable with it and they know that they've done the right thing for the person they're trying to sell to.
Right. Yeah, why do you think people are, I mean, it's all kinds of sales. The ask for the close is always something there's a hesitancy, and it's like it feels personal or something.
Yeah. So I think for me, like looking back at how I've learned and how I've trained, a lot of it is that lack of confidence, right? Maybe it's
Yeah.
because you didn't ask all the right questions before you asked for the sale to know whether they're really interested in it or what reservations they might have, so that you could overcome them before you ask. Um, you know, I think that's probably the biggest challenge for a lot of people, or they just aren't really interested in, I was kind of like the thrill of the kill. I'm a wallflower, but I also like to win, right?
Yeah.
So winning is important to me, but also I'm not going to lead a resident or a prospect down a path to an apartment that's not going to work for them either. So I take a lot of time and interest in what it is that they're looking for to make sure that I'm finding them the perfect home.
Yeah. Well, would you say you're more introverted potentially?
Probably. I think there's another, what is it? There's introvert, extrovert, and ambivert. I might be an
Yeah.
ambivert.
Yeah. I
I
think
might
I
be
probably
now.
swing more ambivert, but I hedge towards introvert more so. Um, and what I find is I'm very much an observer, and I like take in a lot of information. So I've learned how to ask questions and things as to why I'm even able to do this, because most people in my, like, I guess, typical makeup and being more introverted, they don't feel comfortable in this type of role. But what I find is, if you're good at like sitting back and ask the questions and pay attention to what they're saying, then it's giving you information that help you when it
Right.
comes to the sale. So because what I think the knee-jerk reaction in sales is, you always want extroverts and really energetic people. But I think what you really need is, just like you said, people that are genuine and
Yeah,
people that are paying attention.
I agree.
So, yeah.
We
So
might be cut from the same cloth there.
yeah, I think sometimes it's like also being able to get out of your shell a little bit, get comfortable, like you said, have confidence. Sometimes the shyness is more of a confidence thing. I think people are shy because they aren't comfortable or confident. But if they can break free and have a little confidence, they are less, quote unquote, shy.
Right.
So yeah. All right. Well, that's awesome. All right. So again, we've already stated it. You're in the midst of looking for a job. The elephant in the room, if you will. Open for work. It's
I
out there
am.
on your LinkedIn. People know about it. Uh, but what's it like out there? What is it like looking for a job at this stage in your career? I'm sure to a degree there can be frustration and things like that. But what has your experience been?
So yeah, it's been interesting, right? This is the second time within the last 13, 14 months that I've had to look for a job. And so I can tell you, and between last August and this August, how things have changed dramatically. Um,
Mm,
so the market right now, at least at my level for roles, is or has been very scary. Not a lot out there. It is starting to open up, so I'm very hopeful about some recent prospects that I have. Um, but it's challenging more so in that, and I say this more for helping other people. You have to be prepared, and I was not even prepared the second time, right? And the market's changed, so making sure that your resumes are updated, and I don't mean just you go in and type up the updates, but have them professionally done.
mm,
I had somebody do mine and it made a world of difference. It made a world of difference for a couple reasons, not just because they can articulate better about what I bring to the table than what I can, because I've never been one to kind of like toot my own horn very well. But because they have the tools to be able to make your resources for resumes work with the current hiring platforms that people are using. So what I found when I reached out to a resume person was that not only do you need your standard Word doc or PDF doc, you need to have this ATS, or I think it is, version. So certain versions that will autofill all these crazy forms that people give you. Plus, they'll
Mm,
also generate more feedback, or I guess more positive hits, we'll say, from those AI sources that are reviewing resumes before they even get to a person. So the
gotcha.
market has completely changed as it relates to that. And I would encourage anybody who is open for work and hasn't had a professional resume done, or even those who are not open for work, just to have it done and have it ready. You can always go
Yeah.
back and tweak and adjust, but um, finding out that you're without a position or a role or a home to go to the next day, and then looking at your resume and saying, oh my God, I haven't updated this thing in 10 years, even 6 months, is it's disheartening, because you're like, you don't want to do that when you're stressed about not having a job. You kind of just want to cry in a corner somewhere, right? Um, so I'm here to tell you that if you haven't done it, you should do it. And if you need somebody, feel free to reach out to me privately. I'll tell you who I use, but there's several different people out there that can help to get you on the path to making sure that you're ready should something happen. And
Gotcha.
there's so many layoffs that are happening right now. They're still continuing. The economy is still kind of shaky and shifty, and I foresee that there's probably going to be additional cuts. But then I also, like I said earlier, things seem to be opening up, at least in my job market. So who knows how it's going to play out? It's been a very crazy year. But I think for me, get your resumes ready if you don't. And, reach out to your network. Networks are extremely important. I was overwhelmed. I was as overwhelmed with people who were reaching out to me when I was in search of a job to help support me, as I was underwhelmed by some of the people who did not reach out to me who I thought would.
Mm,
So it was very surprising how that dynamic worked.
yeah.
Keep your network close, communicate, and if you are looking, don't be afraid to reach out to anybody that you know, or reach out to somebody that you know that might know somebody who knows somebody if you're looking for a role, because you never know what a few good words from somebody will do to help you, to boost you in getting you an interview. And
Yeah.
I hate to even say that out loud, because I think people should get interviewed and hired on their merits. But the way the hiring is right now, you really need some type of a leg up. And if you're not prepared with a good resume that's going to get through some of this AI stuff that's happening with that resume screening, then you could be waiting a very long time before you find your next role. So,
That's true. And are you finding that the one that you said, is it for like job sites that you submit the one with, is it very nailed down with different keywords and things?
yes, I think so. So they gave me, the resume company that I use gave me my resume in 3 different formats and a cover letter in different formats too. And then I have the ability to use their website to go in and tweak it for different roles if I want to. But I think it's ATS. It's an ATS friendly. I guess that's automated something something. I don't know. All I know is when I have something that's an autofill, that's the one that I use. If I
Got
have
it.
something I want to hand to somebody, here's the one that I use. So I have a couple
Oh,
of
okay.
different versions to present. Um, and there's still so many different online applications that require you to fill in everything, even though you're uploading your resume. So the more the resume can do to help you to not have to re-enter that information time and time again, the better. And I say that I've been a little bit more than 60 days since separating with love, and I think I've put out 75 to 80 resumes. So it's quite daunting. You want to make it easier on yourself, because it's stressful enough not having a job.
Right. Totally. Yeah. Well, I hope you all the best in that. I know how hard it can be. Thankfully for you, you're in a position where you have support, and It's not as urgent. Not to say that you probably don't want a job sooner than later.
Oh, it's pretty
but
urgent, everybody.
everybody, right now. But urgent in the sense of,
I
yeah.
look like a
But
gargoyle. Oh, that's pretty scary. Do I look that bad?
I don't know who that is.
Me neither.
They're on
I don't
Facebook.
think. I'm going to check.
Yeah. Our Facebook page is one that's public, and I guess anybody could see, so I don't know.
Oh.
The thing I was going to ask though is just looking for a job. You before this most recent run, it'd been a while, so having the ability to, you know, have confidence and really get out there and not let things, you know, I guess, get under your skin or get discouraged, or what's that been like? Because I know for me, back when I was looking for a job, which was a few years ago, I was in the same boat. It could be hard sometimes to not get in your own head. I know I got into a kind of negative space personally.
Okay. Yeah. So I would say, I've been there and done that with the negative space. And I think everybody needs to go through that to some extent. The point is, though, you don't want to stay there and linger, right? Take a couple of days, suck in what's happened, think about what it is that you really want to do with your life and your career, and then start to work on what you're going to do and how you're going to do it, right? I had a great network, and I was actually the first of many to be separated from one of my employers before a big group of layoffs happened. So I actually found, I don't want to say solace in other layoffs, but I found a network of people where I was able to help them because I had already been there and done that and was working through all of those pains and woes. So I think it's extremely important to keep your confidence up. And I've never had a lack of confidence in my ability to perform my role or to be a good leader to my teams ever. I don't think. I'm good at what I do, and I'm not afraid to say that. So that has always been something that I've kept in the back of my mind. Is it still upsetting to lose a job in any way, shape, or form? Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like somebody's, knocking you out.
Yeah.
Blindsiding you. You're not ready for it, right? You're never going to be ready for it as much as you can think you're going to be ready for it. And believe me, there were points in my life where I thought I was ready for it. But you're not going to be ready for it. So for me, I found a lot of solace, we'll say, in being able to help other people to know their worth. Because as I was actively interviewing for some roles, people I knew and peers were interviewing for roles, and helping to provide them with guidance, like, don't short sell yourself. This is not the time. You've only been in this for 2-3 weeks, right? You still got a little bit of time. Let's make sure you understand what your worth is and don't settle for less. I think right now there's a lot of employers out there that want people to settle for less. And I think there's a lot of that push and pull comes from, some of the economy scares, as well as wanting people to go back to the office that were previously remote. There's a lot of things that are happening in the marketplace. And there's a push and pull between employers and employees or potential employees. And I think if you hold out long enough, you're going to find the right fit. So my advice to people would be, don't settle for less. Know your worth. Every day, wake up, look in the mirror, and know that you have value. And, don't spend 8 hours a day, every day on LinkedIn trying to find a role.
Yeah.
Because you can do that. I did that. Like, I was like, oh my God, this is exhausting. Last August, September, it was completely exhausting. And, once a day, check in. If you want to post to keep your, your content and your visibility up there on some of the LinkedIn profiles, then you should do that. If you're not comfortable with that, then follow some people that you really admire and like and see, like Evan Happel here in the Boss Talks. And, just make sure that you're connecting with people still, and know your value and worth, and don't settle. It's
Yeah.
my advice for people.
Yeah.
And reach
Well,
out to me if you need an ear to bend, like anybody. I'm here.
yeah. No, that's very nice of you to do that. And um, yeah, it's really important to stay connected to people. And I always love helping people at least know about positions and opportunities. Not to say I might be I don't know how helpful I am in getting that job, but I at least like to help people know about things and get them connected in the right direction. So
Right.
that's always something that is nothing else can be helpful. Well, thanks for sharing about that. I know it can be a tough subject. Really can be the elephant in the room, and sometimes people want to avoid it and hedge it instead of talking to you about it. So,
Well, yeah, and that's the other thing, right? The open for work. There's the big debate out there. Should I have the banner up or should I not have the banner up? Having the banner up makes you look desperate. Not having the banner up, it depends on who you ask, right? The recruiters I saw post today, the recruiters are like, I love it when people have their open for work banner up. Then I know if I'm trying to fill a position, they're available. Why would I
yeah,
want to go through a whole bunch of people who aren't available when I know I have ready active people who are available? So
absolutely.
I wear my green banner proudly until I don't have to wear it anymore, which hopefully won't be for too long. So,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. well, Well, I hope it's not too long. But in the meantime, enjoy the beach. You're not far from it, and that's a nice little bit of, where you can get a little bit of that, you time and time to the outdoors, obviously.
yep.
All right. So the next thing that you mentioned as a passion of yours is really caring for the customer. Um, Over the years, I'm sure you've had that play out in a lot of different ways, but what is it about caring for the customer that is really a passion for you?
So I think I say caring for the customer, but it's really caring for people, right?
Yeah.
That could be your team members, people who support you, who you support, your residents, vendors. And it kind of, I think, goes back to that whole leasing perspective, right? And what we talked about earlier, listening to people.
Mhm.
And a lot of times you'll run into people who listen just so that they can talk afterwards. And then there's people who listen because they want to help. Um, so for me, I try and listen to everybody with the idea that I want to help. Now, I'm not saying that I've never been somebody who's like, I feel like I have to say something, right? I think we all have done
Yeah.
that before. Um, but in order to truly care for any of those groups of people and owners as well, you have to be able to listen to what it is that they truly need and hope that you've created a bond of some type of trust, which is harder with residents than it is with employees, yet still hard with employees. um, Probably even harder with owners because you're running their business, and maybe a little bit easier with some vendors because you have a different relationship with them that's not so close knitted. um, but you have to build trust, I think, and then once you build trust and you listen, you try and do what you can with that information to try and serve people the best way that you can. um,
Yeah.
I found that that's, I think, the best way to care for customers is to really just listen and act in honesty, I guess, or be genuine, as we said earlier, right? And trying to really want to do something to solve a problem.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. And caring for the customer, uh, you mentioned obviously you in this case would be the customer, the supplier relationship. Um, what's your opinion about the supplier relationship? Should it be one that you become close with a supplier, or is it something that you should be held at arm's length?
So I think you have to have a close relationship with a supplier when you are using them as a vendor.
Hmm.
Um, let's see how I want to phrase this. Because you want to be able you want to be able to tell them what it is that you need. You want to make sure that
Sure.
they understand. You want to have that conversation, right?
Yeah.
But anybody who's worked with me as a vendor will also tell you that I'm a big fan of 3 bids every year. So you better
Mm,
give me your best and your final first, and we'll go from there. But I'm not going to tell you how to underbid the next guy. right? I'm going to expect that, and it's not always about money either, right? It's about performance. So
Sure.
how well did this, XYZ company do for me? And can ABC do the same exact thing for the same amount of money, or is there a risk involved with that, big cut in reduction? Sometimes it's not worth it. So you have to keep, as a vendor, I think you have to keep your um, apartment partners happy, right?
Mhm.
And as a apartment partner, you have to keep the vendors happy too. A lot of that's communication, both ways, right? Making sure that we're all good. I've built some great friendships with many people in the industry that I've never used as a vendor, or that I've tried to use as a vendor but couldn't get in with my company, right? Because the numbers just weren't there. So the goal is just to keep that relationship open. Um, and vendors, quite, let's say this too, but a lot of times vendors change frequently. So if you break a relationship with a vendor, they could be with your current supplier next year.
Yeah.
There's a lot of changes in vendors that we don't see in the property management industry as frequently as on the vendor side. So they're great relationships to have, and great partners to have. And I've built some great friendships over the years with many of the vendors that I've used and don't use. So
Yeah. And would you say it's becoming more and more vital, that relationship within or with suppliers, being that, as it becomes harder and harder to staff certain roles within multifamily, things like um, maintenance or maybe even other roles, you almost have to lean into suppliers even more to fill in the gaps here and there. So I could see, to a degree, it's almost like they're an extension of a community rather than just, oh, I use you every once in a while.
right, yeah, no, absolutely. Vendors were invaluable, especially during, like, looking at the COVID times, right? When a regular contract, everybody had COVID, number one. So
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
if you had a regular contractor that would show up and be able to do some work to help you with turns or whatever else, they might be sick. So you need a
Yeah.
backup vendor, right? So, um, vendor partners are crucial in this industry, whether it's making sure that you get the supplies that you need or help with on-site services, and temp agencies too. Maybe there's office vacancies that you need to fill that you just can't find people that want to do this work anymore. So it's changing dynamic. um, a lot of, I guess it's the Gen Zers, right? They have a very different view of what a work-life balance should look like, as opposed to what my Gen X generation kind of looks at. So I think employers have to be cognizant of that. And I'm sure from the vendor side, you guys see the same thing, right?
Yeah.
There's probably a little bit more flexibility that's required, and we just have to kind of reinvent how we're doing things and how we utilize the resources that we have to be successful.
Yeah. Do you think, in light of that and just all the conversation around maybe centralization or like kind of shifting how we staff, maybe people that are more specialized versus broad and or generalists, um, do you think that we'll get more and more down that rabbit hole of centralization, kind of like, oh, you service multiple communities, you work for this property management company, but you are specialized in a specific thing and do it for, more than one community?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think the labor market of what we have is really going to dictate for each property management company how they source that. Um, you know, there's been many years where I was working for larger companies and they're like, we should just hire on an on-site carpenter. We
Uh-huh.
spend so much in carpentry repairs every year. Like, why don't we have just somebody float around? We have enough work to keep them busy. Um, but we didn't do it. And there's pluses and minuses to both, right? It's not just the salary. There's the health care, and can they meet up with the actual demand that a contractor can? Are you still pulling in resources both ways?
Yeah.
Maintenance is a dying breed. So I think from a property management standpoint, less important than centralization is, it's more important to figure out what do we have to do to make their jobs easier, so that they want to stay on longer.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, people don't grow. You know, I didn't get out of high school saying I want to be a property manager or a regional manager, right? And people don't come out of high school saying I want to be a maintenance technician or a service manager. They just don't,
Right.
unless they don't even know those careers exist. So we
Sure.
have to make those careers ones that people will want to have by, number one, paying them what they're worth and appropriately, and giving them some type of a work-life balance and understanding the challenges and really listening to try to solve those challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's probably not a very straightforward solution that because I think it's a case by case, company by company,
Right,
property by property,
right,
region, all the things. But you're right. I think we need to work on how we market the industry to the workforce and, attracting people, so that they know about it and that it is a viable solution when it comes to an occupation for the long term.
right.
Yeah. Well, thanks for answering, and thanks for kind of giving your feedback about those things too. Um, and then lastly, when it comes to leadership, obviously being a regional manager, your role is a leadership role, but leadership is beyond role. It's also a mindset and a position. So some people can be in a role that's a leadership role, but not be a very good leader. So I think that you've been both a good leader and in a leadership role. So what is it that you would say about that role of leadership from your standpoint and your years in your
So,
roles?
number one, I hope that anybody who's worked for me would say the same. You know, and that's the goal, right? So I've worked for some very good leaders throughout my career and some not so great leaders throughout my career as well. And I think you learned just as much, if not more, from those that you don't want to be like when you grow up as you do
Mm,
from those that you do want to be like when you grow up. Um,
absolutely.
you look like you've lived that experience before as well, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So, you know, for me, it's about how do I try and help people to be the best versions of themselves, not only when they're in the office, but when they walk out the door. Like, I want people who can be happy in their home life, come to work feeling happy about their job. And a lot of that comes through just building trust, I think, with employees, so that when they have a problem, whether it's at work or at home, they feel comfortable enough to come to you and say, I have a problem and I need help. And then you have to really want to help them.
Yeah.
I'm a big believer that I think 99%, if not 99.5% of the people that have worked for me want to do a good job. There's probably
Mm,
a small percentage that, you know, maybe don't, but the bulk of people really want to do a good job. And it's my role when I'm in that leadership role to make sure that I'm providing them with the tools that they need to be successful in doing a good job. Um, and sometimes that doesn't, you know, you can tell, right? If you have employees that walk through the door every day, happy, hey, how you doing? And then one day there's not a hey, happy, how are you doing? You know that something's probably going wrong, right? You have a couple of choices as a leader. You can ignore that and wish it away, or you can wait a few minutes and have a talk with an employee, not to pry, right? Because it's none of your business, quite frankly, but to say, you know, I noticed something's not right today. Is there anything I can help you with? It's a yes or no question. Do you need to take a walk? Go take a walk. Do you need a half day? You know, do you need the whole day? What do you need? Let me help to support you. um, and I've worked for leaders who have operated that way. So I think that's the kind of leader that I am, and that's the kind of leader that I aspire to be, and that's the leadership role that I thrive in, right?
mhm.
Um, and then there's other aspects of it as well. So when you're a leader, you're not only helping the people, you know, in their day to day job and role, and sometimes with their personal lives, but you're also helping them just to grow in their career, right? What do you want to be? How do I help you to get to the next level if you want to get to the next level? And there's others who you have in roles who don't ever want to do anything different. There are leasing consultants out there who don't ever want to be anything but a leasing consultant. And that's fine, right? They're property managers who don't ever want to go above the property manager level position. That's fine too. Just continue to work well, and you can stay where you're at. I'm not somebody who's going to force somebody into a leadership role or the next level role if they're not ready for it or they don't want it. I might ask you to help out if there's a shortage, right? But I'm not going to force somebody to make changes in what they're currently doing on a permanent basis if they're not interested in making that change.
Right.
So that's kind of where I lean to, I'll say,
Mhm.
with leadership. My team members will tell you I'm not a pushover. I'm tough, but I'm fair, very fair. um, but I think I've built some great bonds with employees over the years by using the style that I use when I'm able to use it. So
Yeah. I mean, you're from the Northeast. There's kind of, I think that's just bred into all of you guys.
you think?
A little more straightforward. I think the culture's kind of just that way. Um, there's some funny stories I have from going down to Florida, and some people were visiting from, I think it was New Jersey area, and the way they were talking, and I'm not saying you talk this way, but they were very like, almost, it almost felt rude, but they were just, that's just how they were talking to each other, and I'm like, okay.
So I could have a tendency to be very brutally honest. I'm not sure if that's
Uh-huh.
the type of talk that you're
Yeah,
talking
that
about.
could be it too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I try and curb that in the workplace, but there are times where it comes out at brutally honest. Most employees would say, and I've had this said to me more than once, like if we walk in an apartment just to check a vacant or whatever, they can tell exactly what I think just by looking at my face. I don't even have to open up my mouth. And
sure.
they're, what's wrong? You tell me.
You already know.
You didn't walk
No.
this before I did you? No.
Whoopsies.
Yeah. But you know what? It's all learning experience. Sometimes it's a learning experience for me as well, right? Those are
Yeah,
the conversations that lead to, okay, now what can I do to help, you know,
right, right.
to make it
Yeah,
better?
absolutely. Are there any people that have been like really good from a mentor stip, or even example standpoint, um, in your history and work, that you've always leaned into and learned from?
Oh yeah. I mean, I would say the most recent, especially in this role that I'm in, my former regional vice president with home properties, her name is Carrie Holtum. And I learned a lot about leadership from him, especially at the regional level, because we had a very open office where you could see how everybody was, treated and talked to, et cetera. So everybody was treated with respect. But not only that, there was a lot of autonomy. So if I needed to do things one way for me to be successful, but my peer in the same role needed to do things a different way for them to be successful, and then the third person wanted to do a completely different way for them to be successful, that was okay, right? It wasn't my way or the highway, how you had
Hmm.
to do things. Of course, there's reporting and things like that obviously everybody has to do and has timelines have to be met. But as far as leading teams to success, there was a lot of autonomy and no micromanagement whatsoever. Um, and allowed me really to use that experience to do what worked for me, but then to also open up conversations with my peers and them with me if I couldn't figure something out, to say, well, how are you doing that over there? Because you seem to be
Mm,
doing a really good job at that, right?
yeah.
And maybe two or three of them were doing it completely different, and I'd look at those three different ways and say, all right, well, I think this way is going to work for me, let's try that, right? um, so I think from a leadership perspective, um, that and as well as just empathy, she was probably one of the first leaders that ever. I was generally an empathetic person at home, but I didn't know how to bring that to the workplace as it related to dealing with employees. So she allowed me the ability to be able to be empathetic in the workplace as well, which, not everybody knows that you can be that way. And quite frankly, not every employer operates that way. So from a
Right.
leadership perspective, she's my lean to.
Nice. Yeah, being empathetic, that's, I mean, I think it's important, but it's also, I think some people are afraid to be, what is it, emotionally intelligent, or like even bring their guard down when it comes to their work self, because they don't want to be seen as soft or a rollover or pushover or
Actually having a heart.
having a heart, yeah, some people want to have this tough persona or exterior or whatever it is, and
Right.
um, working for that can be really hard.
True.
Yeah, yeah. If that's all you're getting,
Right.
like it's one thing to, like, to mean business, but also show that you care.
Right.
Because working for somebody that doesn't seem to care at all, that's not a good experience.
No, not.
Yeah. So that's great that you had an experience, at any stage, having that experience from somebody to help you, bring that into your, I guess, your tool belt and your work persona, so to speak. Um, I think is super, super helpful. And it doesn't matter what age or stage of a career you're in, it's always good to be able to adjust and add to the way you operate.
Yep. Yeah, and when you lead with empathy, you teach your team members to also lead the rest of their teams with empathy, because you know, a lot of the on-site employees who you're helping to mentor and train, they're going to model your behavior. So you can either model behavior that you want them to trickle down, or you can model behavior that you want them to trickle down that's not so great, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So, you know, and there are even harder lessons to teach people that, right? So, well, what would you do if I said that to you? Like, let's think about this. Put
sure.
yourself in somebody. It's hard to step back and put yourself in somebody else's shoes.
Yeah,
My mom always said, don't ever judge anybody, Annemarie, unless you've walked a mile in their shoes, ever.
right, right.
And I take that to heart. And it's taught me a lot about, if you can't judge people based on what you think is a perceived something wrong until you've really had conversations with them. And maybe you might find that you should be empathetic with them after you
Right,
listen.
right. Yeah, yeah. It can be hard sometimes, though,
You
when
can.
you when you're faced with what you think is the real person without any knowledge of who they are out externally. Your knee jerk reaction definitely can be, well, I don't care.
But
Maybe.
hopefully, if you're saying I don't care, you're saying that to a trusted confidant and not
Or the
directly.
mirror. Yeah,
Right? Yeah. Not
yeah,
not out loud.
yeah.
Before you've had a chance to breathe, because we've all been there, right? You have that frustration, you're, oh my God, not again, I don't care, blah blah. And then you sit
Right.
back and you're like, okay, wait a minute, let me calm down here, because
Yeah.
this isn't personal, it's not about me, it's not about the
Right.
company, it's really about the employee, right? So
Yeah.
get back into having a
Yeah.
conversation.
And then you give them an opportunity,
Right.
to share, like, where they're at and why maybe that went the way it did.
Yeah.
Now, if they respond poorly in that moment, well, then they
That's
that's
a
on
different
them.
discussion. Yeah, that's a different discussion. Right.
Yeah, that's totally different. But yeah, sometimes just leaning in and asking why is helpful and makes sense. So yeah.
Sure does.
Well, thanks for sharing your insights and heart and all that, and um, showing up and being authentic in this show. I appreciate it, and those that will listen to this in the future will too. So I appreciate you being on today, being the boss of the week for this episode. It's been great chatting with you and getting to know you a little bit more, and that you're wearing the boss bling with pride. I appreciate that as well. But just like Annemarie came on the show today, you too can. So if you want to shine a light as to why you're a boss and what your passions are and what your story is, I'd love to host you here on Boss Talks. So reach out and we can make it happen. It's been Boss Talks episode 103. And Annemarie, I just, again, thank you so much for being here, for being on the episode today. And I wish you so much good fortune and luck when it comes to your search for a new role, and that it's a good fit for you and the next place you go.
Thank you so much, Evan. It was a great chat and went by fast. So
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah, you bet. Well, thanks for being here today. And again, it's been Boss Talk, so thanks for watching.
Have a good one, everyone.